They used me like a bank. They laughed while robbing me. They forgot I could fight back. Sounds like the title of a movie, doesn't it? But no, this is a true story. One that was published in the New York Ledger in the early 2000s and shocked the public with the sheer level of betrayal within a single family. What could possibly push a man to call the police on his own family at his own dinner table? I spent over a month gathering, compiling, and verifying every detail to bring you this story, because this isn't just a story. It's a survival lesson. Marcus Quinn, 34, is a software engineer living alone in Seattle, quiet, reserved, and principled. No wife, no kids, no debt, no parties. He spends most of his time working, saving, and investing in his future. But that stable life unintentionally turned him into an interest-free bank for his entire family. Marcus never said no. He believed it was his duty, but he never expected his kindness to be twisted into obligation, that his silence would be mistaken for submission. And then one day, he realized he wasn't just the one they borrowed from. He was a living wallet, and they had drained him dry. At first, it was just small, occasional requests, like the night Vanessa. His sister urgently needed $2,000 for her child's tuition. Marcus wired the money before midnight. She said she'd pay him back soon, but she never brought it up again. The second time, she called him stranded on the highway with a broken-down car. Marcus helped again. From then on, just a little help became the default every time Vanessa hit a rough patch, and those rough patches never stopped coming. Brent, Vanessa's husband, was out of work for nearly a year. When Marcus heard they were about to be evicted from their apartment, he immediately paid 3 months' rent in advance. He didn't want his niece and nephew living in uncertainty, but then Brent bought a PS5, then a brand new sound system. No one mentioned the rent Marcus had covered, and Marcus didn't ask. His mother, always gentle but sharp, never directly demanded anything. Instead, she'd press the point. You're single, no real burdens, helping your siblings a little. That's just the right thing to do. It's what good people do. Marcus didn't argue, but each time he helped, instead of gratitude, he got that familiar look as if to say, "Of course you helped. That's what you're supposed to do." He started to feel drained, but he didn't dare speak up, because if he did, he'd be the ungrateful son, the selfish brother. And so the tiny bites kept piling up year after year. No blood, no bruises, just a quiet, relentless bleeding of every dollar, every breath. That family gathering felt just like any other. A simple dinner, a few glasses of wine, laughter mixed with scattered conversations. Marcus arrived late due to work, but still brought a bottle of expensive red wine his mother loved. He sat down, forcing a smile, trying to push aside the exhaustion that had weighed on him for months. After the dinner, Marcus sat in his car. Out of habit, he pulled out his phone and checked his bank account. Just a second. Just a blink. Account balance, $0. He frowned, refreshed the app 3 times, then again and again. No change. $200,000 or his entire life savings gone. He turned around and walked back into the house, heart pounding, face ice cold. "Brent," he said. His brother-in-law was leaning against the kitchen counter, a beer in hand. He didn't look surprised. He just smirked, that half-laugh, half-sneer kind of smile. "Relax, man. We needed it more than you." Marcus turned to Vanessa. She didn't even stand up, sitting cross-legged on the couch, wine glass in hand, like she was watching some amusing episode on TV. "It's not like we stole it," she shrugged, sipping her drink. "It's family." Marcus couldn't say a word. His throat clenched, not because of the money, but because of the calm in their eyes, as if it was all completely normal. Marcus didn't scream. He didn't smash his phone. He didn't pound the table or demand answers. Instead, he quietly walked into the living room where the family was still chatting away as if nothing in the world had changed. He sat down across from his mother, phone gripped loosely in his hand, eyes locked on the screen. He hit refresh on the bank app, once, then again, and again. 4 times in total. Each time hoping something was wrong, a glitch, a network error, anything. But no, the number stayed the same, 000. He looked up. Mom. His voice was hoarse, so soft, even he barely recognized it. Mom. Did you know about this? His mother, Eleanor, didn't lift her head. Her hands kept knitting calm and steady as if his question was nothing more than a passing breeze. Then she replied gently, slowly, but like a slap of ice, sweetheart. You've always been so sensitive. Marcus swallowed hard, not because of the words, but because of her tone, the voice of someone who didn't think they had done anything wrong. The same woman who once held him after bullies pushed him in elementary school, now telling him that $200,000 disappearing wasn't a big deal. No one in the room looked at him. No one seemed shocked. Vanessa even let out a scoff. Marcus, come on. Don't make this a thing. You're not starving. You have a house. You have a car. You're single. You live alone. What do you even need money for? That question had hung in the air like the scent of gunpowder. But Marcus didn't answer. He didn't want to hear more. No more justifications. No more guilt trips. He just wanted to hear himself, and for the first time in years, he heard the silence inside him speak. He stood up. No words, no glance back. Just a small movement like a leaf falling, yet it shook the ground beneath them. Marcus! Brent called out, irritation creeping into his voice. You're really just walking out. Don't act like we held you at gunpoint. Marcus didn't stop. He grabbed his coat, walked to the door, and turned back just for a moment. Not to threaten, not to plead, but to say one thing with a calmness that chilled the room. Well then, I'm sure you won't mind what I do next. And then he opened the door and left. Inside that house, only the sound of wine pouring into glasses and a sports broadcast on TV remained. No one noticed. The storm had just begun. Marcus didn't go back to that house. He didn't call to scold anyone. He didn't blast them on social media to expose the truth. He didn't tell his coworkers. He didn't confide in friends. He didn't even vent to the elderly neighbor who always asked if he had a girlfriend yet. He chose silence. But in that silence, a plan began to take shape, calculated and meticulous, just like the security systems he once designed for software platforms, quiet, precise, and leaving no vulnerability unchecked. Marcus started with his bank statements, every transaction cross-referenced, every withdrawal annotated, every transfer to unfamiliar accounts tracked. He discovered that Vanessa had accessed his bank account from the desktop computer in their mother's study, the same one Marcus had temporarily used weeks earlier to check work emails. The account had been breached right when Marcus forgot to log out. From that point on, Vanessa, with Brent's tech support, had carried out interbank transfers in silence over 6 months, not in one go, but in small waves, $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, until it totaled $200,000. Worse yet, he found payments made toward credit cards in Brent's name. Purchases from Amazon, Sephora, even a down payment on a family vacation at a luxury resort in Hawaii, while Marcus himself hadn't left Seattle for more than 2 weeks in the last 5 years. He didn't cry. He didn't rage. He documented. Every transaction printed. Every IP address logged. Every receipt sorted into numbered folders. And then, 1 week after that family dinner, Marcus stepped into his attorney's office, the same one who had helped him with an employment contract the year before. I don't just want my money back, Marcus said, eyes steady. I want the truth handled by the law. And I don't want anyone in this family to ever do this again to someone else. The lawyer nodded, Together, they filed a formal complaint with the Financial Crimes Division, accusing Vanessa and Brent of identity theft and bank fraud. A few days later, Marcus received his first response via email. Your complaint qualifies for criminal investigation. Please provide supporting documentation. Marcus clicked. Reply attached, a 200 millibound zip file, organized, thorough, undeniable. For the first time in years, he wasn't just a walking wallet anymore. He was the one setting the boundary, and he was ready to hold them accountable, one by one. Saturday night, the family had invited Marcus to a reconciliation dinner at their mother's house, the place where it all began, and the place they believed it could all end peacefully. Marcus arrived on time. No gifts, no polite smile like before. In his hand was a black leather briefcase, inside it, a laptop and a thick file folder. His face was eerily calm, but his eyes were cold frozen ever since the day he discovered he'd been betrayed by his own blood. His mother, Eleanor, opened the door with a forced smile. You're here. I made your favorite stew. Marcus didn't respond. He walked into the living room. Vanessa was already there, arms crossed, eyes wary. Brent was buried in his phone, but when he saw Marcus, he looked up and scoffed. What are you doing here? Thought you wanted to cut ties. Marcus placed the briefcase on the dining table. He didn't sit. He simply stood there, unzipped the bag, pulled out his laptop and powered it on. No one here's being forced, right? He began, voice steady. No threats. And everyone still insists. This wasn't theft, correct? Vanessa rolled her eyes, letting out a scoffing laugh. Oh my God, you're still on that. Marcus, you act like we robbed a bank. You've always helped us. That's what family does. What's the big deal? Brent nodded in agreement. You don't have a wife, no kids, no one relying on you. So what if you helped us? It's not like we wasted the money. We used it to live to survive. Marcus set the folder on the table and opened it to the first page, a detailed list of 43 unauthorized transactions from his account to Brent's credit cards, Vanessa's savings, and even the payment for a Maui resort booking. He closed the folder, eyes locked on them, unblinking. If it wasn't theft, then you won't mind what's coming next. Silence. The only sound was the clinking of dishes in the kitchen, his mother hands trembling. Then 3 knocks on the door. Knock. 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 Brent raised an eyebrow. Vanessa shot up from the couch. Marcus didn't turn. He simply said, I didn't call them for revenge. I called them because I refuse to keep living as a walking wallet in my own home. The door swung open. 3 individuals stepped in wearing jackets labeled Financial Crimes Unit, the flashing lights from the patrol car outside casting shadows on the ceiling. Vanessa Quinn, Brent Taylor, the lead officer, announced voice flat. You are subjects in an active investigation for financial fraud and identity theft. Vanessa went pale. Marcus, are you insane? You called the police to our mother's house? Brent stood, voice rising. You want to see your own sister get arrested? Marcus looked straight at them, his gaze devoid of feeling. I want to see people held accountable for what they've done, no matter who they are. His mother stood frozen in the kitchen, hand covering her mouth. Marcus, you didn't have to do this. We're family. He turned to her and spoke slowly. Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't lie. Family doesn't treat one of their own like an ATM. If this hadn't happened, I would have kept pretending our family was still whole. But it's not, Mom. It hasn't been for a long time. I'm just the only one who stopped pretending. For the first time in his life, no one argued. No one laughed. No one turned his truth into a joke, and Marcus stood there, the only one awake, in a house full of excuses. As soon as the 3 investigators left the house to finalize paperwork, the air in the living room turned ice cold. But the silence didn't last because Vanessa exploded first. You think you're doing the right thing? She shot up from the couch, her voice trembling with a mix of fury and panic. What do you want? To see me in handcuffs? To see Brent lose his job? To watch Mom fall apart? Is that your idea of justice? She didn't wait for Marcus to respond. Tears streamed down her face. Mascara smeared her expression, twisted with anger and pain. You always helped. You're my brother, the kind one. The one I thought would always be there. We thought you'd understand. Brent, who had been standing silently in the corner, stepped forward. Now, fists clenched. You're tearing this family apart over a few transactions. Over some money. Do you even know what this'll do to my daughter? Marcus looked at Brent, the brother-in-law who took 3 months of rent money and never once said thank you. The man who now called $200 a few transactions. He shook his head. But before he could speak, his mother stepped forward, eyes glassy with tears. Eleanor placed a hand over her chest, her voice aching. We needed you, Marcus. You've always been the strongest, the only stable one. We had no one else to rely on. I didn't know things would go this far. But Brent was out of work, Vanessa's raising a child alone, and I just wanted to keep the family together. Marcus narrowed his eyes. No one said we were wrong. No one said, we're sorry. Only you don't understand. You're overreacting. You're blowing this out of proportion. Then Vanessa broke down again. We didn't mean to hurt you. We just thought you wouldn't react like this. You've always been the good one, Marcus. You were born to carry us. Marcus stood still for a few moments, his lips pressed tight. There was no more anger in his eyes, no more heartbreak, only a hollow, freezing emptiness, as if the damage had passed the point of no return. He spoke slowly, clearly, every word slicing through their excuses like a blade. You're not crying because you feel guilty. You're crying because I finally stopped staying silent. He turned to Vanessa, the sister who once asked for $2,000 and never stopped taking. You say I always helped. But did you ever once ask if I wanted to? He looked at Brent, the man who bought a new sound system with rent money Marcus had given. You call $200,000 a few transactions. But to me, that was years of saving. Years of skipping vacations. Years of avoiding the doctor. Years of not living because I thought my family needed me more. Then he faced his mother, the one who said, You don't have kids, so it's only right that you help. The one who never asked if he was okay, only why he was disrupting the family. Marcus took a deep breath and said with unwavering resolve, You always say I'm strong, Mom. But being strong doesn't mean I don't feel pain. It doesn't mean everyone gets to drain me dry and say, Come on, it's family, just be understanding. Have you ever asked me, Marcus, are you okay? Have you Mom Vanessa opened her mouth again, but Marcus cut her off with one final sentence, cold, sharp, and merciless. You don't get to cry now. None of you do. Because when I was in pain, when I was drowning, when I discovered my account was empty, all of you were laughing. And for the first time in years, the house fell completely silent. No more blame. No more smug smiles. Just 3 people finally facing the truth, and one man who had chosen to stop being the one who carried everyone else. Marcus left town on a quiet Sunday morning. The air was crisp, the sky gray, but his heart felt lighter than it had in years. He didn't leave a note. He didn't tell a single soul in his family. Just a silent ending after years of carrying the weight of one-word obligation. He moved to a small coastal city where no one knew his name. A modest apartment, bright and simple, with a sunlit balcony and an old armchair just perfect for reading in the afternoon. He changed his phone number, changed his email too. Cut off every channel that once turned him into a walking wallet. And for the first time in years, his phone was quiet. No more texts like, Sis really needs this. I'll pay you back tomorrow. No more 2 a.m. calls. Power's out, can you help Mom cover the bill? No more guilt-laced lines like, you're the one who's doing well. Just help us a little. Marcus stepped into this new life with a quiet fear. The fear of being alone. But he soon realized being alone was never as painful as being used by the people who called you family. He started building new routines, cooking meals for himself, saving up to buy a painting he loved, signing up for a weekend photography class. And one night, sitting by the window, he played an old college song, the one he used to turn off because Brent called it corny, and Vanessa said it was too old for someone your age. For the first time, he felt at peace. Not because someone comforted him, but because he chose himself. No longer the quiet shadow behind people who believed they deserved everything he had. No longer the strong one, the one everyone leaned on without ever once asking, "Are you okay?" Now Marcus lives as a real person, not a bank, not a backup plan, not a tool, just Marcus. And that is enough. 3 weeks after that final confrontation, Marcus received an unexpected email from the law office. Inside was an update on the investigation. Vanessa's bank accounts had been completely frozen. Brent had been placed on indefinite suspension from his job due to ties with an ongoing financial fraud case. His mother, according to the attorney, was now desperately trying to transfer assets to save the house from foreclosure. The entire system that had once treated Marcus as a permanent backup plan was collapsing piece by piece. But Marcus didn't feel triumphant. He didn't feel vindicated, only a quiet emptiness, as if a verdict had been handed down not by a courtroom, but by his own silence. Vanessa tried to reach out. 1 message, then 2, then 5. It started with rage. "Why would you do this to your family?" Then shifted to pleading. "I know I was wrong, but please forgive me." Marcus read every word, but he never replied. He didn't need to scream. I'm hurting because they'd never listened. And now they were the ones facing silence, the same kind of silence they once forced him to swallow every time they called him too sensitive. Then one day, in the old mailbox he still kept for bills, Marcus found a handwritten envelope. No return address, but the handwriting was familiar. Kelly, Brent's younger sister, a piece of his past. Someone who once knew a very different version of him. "It's been a long time since we talked. Honestly, I used to think you were cold. Selfish, even. But now I see you weren't cold. You were just the only one brave enough to stop, while everyone else kept going too far." Marcus sat still, the letter in his hands. For the first time, someone actually saw him. Not a walking wallet. Not the overly kind one. But a human being. Someone who chose to save himself when no one else in the family had the courage to do it. And sometimes all it takes is one sentence. I see it now. You were brave to begin healing wounds that no one ever apologized for, but left deep all the same. Marcus stood by the window of his new apartment, a cup of coffee cooling in his hand, but his heart had never felt more at peace. He watched the strangers walking below, unfamiliar faces, but somehow comforting. No one here knew him as the guy who paid off his sister's credit card debt, or the one his whole family treated like a walking wallet. Here, he wasn't a tool. He was simply himself. He thought back to everything, the times he didn't buy the shoes he liked, afraid someone in the family might need help. The sleepless nights spent wiring money at 2 a.m., the silent cancellations of holiday plans because the kid's birthday is coming. Things are tight right now. And then it hit him. They never asked for help. They assumed he existed to help. The moment he printed those bank statements, submitted the legal documents, that wasn't revenge. That was the first time he chose himself. Not because he stopped loving his family, but because he finally stopped loving himself in a way that allowed them to treat him like that. Marcus used to fear that if he left, he would lose them. But in the end, he realized they were never truly with him. What he lost was only an illusion. And now, after everything he knows, one thing for sure. They saw me as a bank. I showed them I was a person. I don't regret walking away. I regret waiting so long, because sometimes survival doesn't mean staying. Sometimes survival means leaving. And to you, watching this story, he wants you to remember one final truth. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. You don't have to burn yourself down just to make everyone else feel comfortable.